What indicates to a firm that a project will increase shareholder wealth? The NPV is positive. The NPV is an estimate of the dollar amount that would be added to the firm's value as a result of the investment. What part of the NPV calculation is very important, but difficult to estimate? The cost of capital is affected by several things, such as different capital structures, timing of cash flows, and investment potential, which makes it difficult to calculate. An inaccurate prediction of the cost of capital may cause a firm to miss out on good projects or accept bad projects. What is an advantage of using the NPV method? It calculates the dollar value that would be added to the firm by doing the project. The NPV is expressed as a dollar amount, and the result of the NPV calculation is exactly how much value would be added to the firm from that specific project. What is a disadvantage of using the NPV method? It is not an effective way to compare projects of different sizes. NPV should not be used to compare projects of different sizes. What does NPV stand for in financial analysis? Net present value. What does the NPV of a project tell you? How much value the project will add to the firm? Which of the following is an advantage of using NPV for project evaluation? It considers all cash flows and takes the time value of money into account. What is a disadvantage of using NPV for comparing two different sized projects? It may not always provide a complete picture. Why can estimating the cost of capital be a challenge when calculating NPV? Because it is difficult to estimate and significantly affects the NPV calculation. How does NPV consider the risk of a project? By adjusting the discount rate to reflect the project's risk. What is a limitation of NPV when evaluating mutually exclusive projects? It can give misleading results if the projects have significantly different scales. Suppose Alice is trying to explain to her friend, who knows nothing about the time value of money, why she should invest in Alice's new company. Which method of valuation should Alice use to convince her friend to invest? The IRR is easy to interpret, which makes it ideal for communicating the potential of an investment decision. Which NPV value indicates that the IRR has been reached? $0. The IRR is the rate of return that makes the NPV of a project equal to 0. Why is the IRR a poor valuation method for a project with unconventional cash flows? There are multiple sign changes in the calculation resulting in multiple IRRs, and it is impossible to tell which IRR is the correct one. A company called Bobby's Books is considering purchasing a new bookbinding machine. The company calculates the hurdle rate of the project to be 9% and the IRR to be 11%. Should the company purchase the bookbinding machine? Yes, because the IRR exceeds the cost of capital. When the IRR of a project is greater than the hurdle rate, the required rate of return, or cost of capital, it indicates that the company should accept the project. What does IRR stand for in project evaluation? Internal rate of return. What is the significance of the IRR in project analysis? It is the return on the investment of a project expressed as a percentage. How does the IRR make the NPV of a project equal to 0? Which of the following is an advantage of the IRR? It considers the time value of money and all cash flows without needing the cost of capital up front. What is a major disadvantage of using IRR for project evaluation? It does not consider the amount of value created by the project. Why can't IRR be used effectively when comparing mutually exclusive projects? Because it may not accurately reflect the scale of value creation between projects. What is a limitation of IRR regarding the reinvestment rate assumption? It assumes all cash flows can be reinvested at the project's IRR, which is often unrealistic. Why is IRR not suitable for projects with unconventional cash flows? Because it can result in multiple IRRs, making interpretation difficult. How does the IRR's limitation regarding project lifespans affect project comparison? It cannot be used to compare projects with different lifespans accurately. Which capital investment evaluation method is presented as a ratio? Profitability Index, PI. The PI is the ratio of discounted benefits to discounted costs. How does the PI aid in interpretation of the NPV? It gives an idea of the return generated by a project. The PI scales different-sized projects so that their returns are comparable should a firm accept a project that has a PI of 0.8. Why? No, because the project would be generating cash inflows that are 20% short of the initial investment. As a rule, firms should accept only projects that have a PI greater than 1. You calculate the PI of a project to be 1, but realize that some aspect of your calculation was incorrect and needs to be adjusted. Which adjustment to the PI estimation should cause you to reject the project? The cash flows were underestimated, so the adjusted annual cash flows are high. The cost of capital was underestimated, so you adjust the cost of capital to be higher. Increasing the cost of capital decreases the PI. Therefore, the new PI will be less than 1, and you should reject the project. What does PI stand for in project evaluation? Profitability Index. What does the Profitability Index, PI, represent? The ratio of discounted benefits to discounted costs. Why is the Profitability Index considered advantageous for project selection? It allows for easy ranking of multiple projects when facing budget constraints. What is a disadvantage of using the Profitability Index for project evaluation? It requires an estimation of the cost of capital, which can be complex. Why might the Profitability Index not be suitable for comparing mutually exclusive projects? Because it does not provide any information on the absolute size of the project's benefits. Why might a firm prefer to raise capital through stocks instead of bonds? Stocks do not require the firm to repay the par value to investors. An investor just purchased a bond for $973 that has a par value of $1,000. What type of bond is this? A discount bond when the market price is less than the par price of a bond. You know that the YTM is currently higher than the coupon rate of that particular bond, so it is being sold at a discount. In what way is preferred stock different from bonds? Companies are allowed to skip payments to preferred stockholders, but not to bondholders. If companies skipped bond payments, they would go into default. Companies can skip payments for preferred stock. However, by skipping these payments, companies are not able to pay common stockholders and must pay dividends in arrears at some point. Why might a firm seek capital investment? To purchase long-term assets for future growth, firms need funding for projects that will increase shareholder wealth in the future. What is the primary purpose of issuing bonds by a company? To raise debt capital. Which of the following characteristics is specific to stocks? They do not expire and can pay dividends. What distinguishes common stock from preferred stock? Common stock confers voting rights on shareholders, while preferred stock does not. What is a key feature of preferred stock? It is a hybrid security with fixed payments and no voting rights. What is the goal of capital investment for a firm? To invest in long-term projects to maximize shareholder wealth. Which method should you use to calculate a bond value? The PV function in Excel. You should use the PV function in Excel given the rate, FV, per, and rate input variables. You are evaluating a common stock. What is a key assumption for this evaluation? The growth rate is assumed to stay the same forever. Common stock valuation uses the constant growth model under the assumption that the growth rate is constant forever. What is the name for the process of evaluating and planning for purchases of long-term assets? Capital budgeting is the process of evaluating and planning for purchases of long-term assets. What is the purpose of using time value of money functions in bond valuation? To calculate the bond's current value and yield to maturity. Which model is typically used to value preferred stock? Perpetuity model. The Gordon growth model is used to find the intrinsic value of common stock. What does the capital asset pricing model, CAPM, help determine? The required return for stock. Which of the following investment evaluation methods considers the time value of money? NPV, IRR, and PI. How does the NPV method evaluate capital investments? By determining the difference between the present value of cash inflows and outflows. What is the primary use of the IRR method in capital investment evaluation? To find the rate of return at which the net present value of all cash flows is zero. The Profitability Index, PI, is used to rank investments by comparing the present value of future cash flows to initial investment. What is a primary advantage of using the NPV method for project evaluation? It provides a dollar value representing the project's contribution to wealth. What is a limitation of the internal rate of return, IRR, method? It cannot handle projects with multiple sign changes in cash flows. Why might the profitability index, PI, not be suitable for mutually exclusive projects? It cannot distinguish between projects of different scales. Why are bonds referred to as fixed income securities? They provide fixed interest payments to bondholders. How are time value of money techniques useful in bond valuation? They help find the yield to maturity, YTM, and price of a bond. What model is used to value preferred stock? Perpetuity model. What does the capital asset pricing model, CAPM, primarily determine? The risk-return relationship for an asset. Why is it important to have an accurate, carefully calculated required rate of return as part of the NPV? An inaccurate required rate estimate could cause a firm to reject good projects or accept bad projects. While the required rate of return is the most difficult part of the NPV calculation to estimate, it is also the most important. A company is trying to decide which of 4 projects to invest in. Project 1 has an IRR of 14% and an NPV of $54,000. Project 2 has an IRR of 11% and an NPV of $67,000. Project 3 has an IRR of 9% and an NPV of $60,000. Project 4 has an IRR of 13% and an NPV of $47,000. If the company can do only one project, which project should it choose to add the greatest value to the firm? Project 2, the project with the highest NPV, will bring the most value to the company. The YTM of a bond went from 8% to 7%. What can be predicted about the price of the bond? It will increase. There is an inverse relationship between YTM and the price of a bond. A potential project to expand the size of an apartment complex will cost $100,000. Its calculated net present value is $5,000. Given this information, which statement is correct? The project should be accepted because it has a positive NPV. Because the NPV is positive, the project should be accepted.